Social climbers who reach the summit often discover that the air is thin, the footing treacherous, and the people already living there have been waiting for any excuse to push them back down the mountain. On the night of October 30th, 1955, 2 shotgun blasts shattered the silence of an Oyster Bay mansion and transformed a Kansas farm girl turned New York socialite into the most notorious woman in America. A woman who claimed she had mistaken her wealthy husband for a prowler in the darkness of their hallway. A woman the courts believed, but high society never did. Ann Woodward had spent 2 decades clawing her way from a dusty coal mining town in southeastern Kansas to the pinnacle of American aristocracy, marrying into the Woodward banking fortune, bearing 2 sons, hosting dinner parties for the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and wearing gowns by the legendary couturier Charles James. Her husband, Billy Woodward, Jr., was a Harvard-educated naval hero who had survived a torpedo attack on the USS Liscombe Bay in 1943, inherited the legendary Bel Air Stud thoroughbred racing operation from his father in 1953, and owned Nashua, the champion horse that won the Preakness and Belmont Stakes in 1955. When she killed him with a 12-gauge Churchill shotgun at approximately 2 a.m, she was either a terrified wife who made a tragic mistake in the darkness, or a calculating gold digger who murdered her way out of a divorce that would have stripped her of everything she had spent her life acquiring. In today's episode of Old Money Allure, we trace how one woman born Angeline Lucille Crowell reinvented herself as Ann Eden, seduced a banking dynasty, married into approximately $100 million in today's currency, then fired the shots that would set in motion a cascade of destruction, claiming at least 5 lives over the next 4 decades, including her own, both of her sons, and the literary genius Truman Capote, who called her Mrs. Bang Bang, and wrote the story that drove her to swallow cyanide. Angeline Lucille Crowell entered the world on December 12, 1915 in Pittsburgh, Kansas, a modest coal mining town in the southeastern corner of the state, where ambition meant survival and escape meant everything. Her father, Jesse Crowell, was a streetcar conductor who had served as a retired military officer from Detroit, Michigan. Respectable work that provided stability, but no wealth. Her mother, Ethel Smiley Crowell, was a schoolteacher and one of the earliest women in Kansas to earn a master's degree from the University of Kansas in 1921, an extraordinary achievement that demonstrated the intellectual ambition her daughter would inherit. Despite her mother's educational accomplishments, the Crowell family lived on a working-class income with no wealth to speak of. Ann attended Kansas City Junior College for 1 year, the only higher education her family could afford. When her parents divorced, the ambitious girl seized the opportunity to reinvent herself completely. She changed her name to Ann Eden, inspired by the actress Eve Arden, choosing a name that sounded glamorous and theatrical rather than plain-spoken. This was far more than a professional decision. It was Ann's declaration that she would leave her modest Kansas past behind forever. Ann idolized Joan Crawford, another Kansas girl who had escaped rural poverty to become a Hollywood legend. Crawford's transformation from Frances Marion Lady Plant to an international movie star demonstrated that theatrical ambition and determination could overcome humble origins. In Crawford, Ann saw both a roadmap and a destiny to emulate. In 1937, at age 22, Ann Eden boarded a train for New York City with photographs in hand and dreams filling her head. She carried with her all the desperate hope of a girl from Kansas who believed that Manhattan held her real destiny. Upon arrival, she leveraged her striking appearance, blonde hair, blue eyes, and an arresting presence, to land representation with the John Robert Powers Modeling Agency, one of the most prestigious in the nation. Work poured in from multiple directions. Her face graced the pages of Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, alongside high-fashion advertisements. In 1939, the Kansas City Independent noted her success. Ann Crowell, professionally Ann Eden, has in the past year and a half become one of New York's ranking fashion models. By 1940, her trajectory seemed assured when she was crowned the most beautiful girl in radio. A coveted title in an era when radio was the dominant medium of entertainment. She secured a role in the radio adaptation of Noel Coward's Set to Music, which had run for over 100 live Broadway performances. But fate intervened in the form of mounting medical bills when her mother's health deteriorated, and the brutal reality that a Hollywood contract was not materializing despite her beauty and success forced Anne to make a pragmatic choice that would change everything. In 1941, Anne took a position as a showgirl at Fifi's Monte Carlo, an exclusive Manhattan nightclub located at 49 East 54th Street, in the heart of the city's entertainment district. Fifi's Monte Carlo was no ordinary nightclub. It catered exclusively to New York's wealthiest and most powerful men, banking executives, industrial magnates, and society figures who paid premium prices for sophisticated entertainment in an elegant setting. Anne worked there as a bunny girl, dancing in a carefully designed costume that accentuated her figure and beauty. High society women whispered that showgirl work was one step away from worse, and rumors would later circulate that Anne had been something more than a dancer for wealthy men. It was there, in late 1941, that she caught the eye of William Woodward Sr., the 56-year-old chairman of the Central Hanover Bank, and one of New York's most prominent financiers. Woodward was a man of considerable accomplishment. Educated at Harvard, he had served as secretary to the United States ambassador to Britain under President Theodore Roosevelt. He had inherited the legendary Bel Air Mansion and Bel Air Stud, a 2,500-acre thoroughbred racing stable in Maryland that would produce some of the greatest racehorses in American history. William Woodward Sr. became Anne's benefactor and lover, showering her with gifts, money, jewelry, and designer dresses, luxuries a former streetcar conductor's daughter would never have otherwise encountered. But then, according to persistent rumors circulating in New York society, the relationship took a disturbing turn. Billy Woodward Jr., despite being listed as one of America's most eligible bachelors, showed no genuine interest in women and demonstrated what society discreetly referred to as a different sort of life. For a family of the Woodwards' standing, this was an existential threat. Homosexuality was utterly scandalous, the kind of revelation that could destroy a family's reputation irreparably. According to the rumor that would follow Anne for the rest of her life, William Woodward Sr. saw in Anne the solution to his problem. A beautiful, ambitious woman, willing to do whatever it took to climb the social ladder, who could seduce Billy, convince him to marry her and produce heirs. Whether orchestrated by his father or not, Anne and Billy began a relationship that shocked everyone who knew them. Billy Woodward Jr., born June 12, 1920, was a Harvard graduate, a decorated Navy veteran who had survived a torpedo attack on the USS Liscombe Bay in 1943, one of the deadliest ship attacks in American naval history, and earned a Purple Heart. The couple announced their engagement on March 6, 1943, and were married 2 weeks later on March 14th in a quiet ceremony in Tacoma, Washington, where Billy was stationed with the Navy. Elsie Woodward, Billy's mother and a member of the famous Crider triplets, whose family descended from John Ogden, who had emigrated to the American colonies in 1670 and founded Elizabethtown, New Jersey, did not attend the wedding. Her absence spoke volumes. She viewed Anne as a gold digger utterly unworthy of the Woodward name. Anne threw herself into becoming the perfect society wife, with the same desperate intensity with which she had transformed herself from Angeline Lucille Crowell into Anne Eden. She hired private tutors to teach her the intricate rules of New York high society, how to address the various ranks, how to set a proper table, how to speak French with correct pronunciation, and how to walk with the deportment expected of a woman of her standing. She dressed with impeccable taste, favouring the designs of Charles James, the brilliant British-born American couturier, renowned for creating architectural gowns that enhanced a woman's figure and displayed her wealth through the intricacy of his construction. The couple had 2 sons in rapid succession, William Woodward, the third, born in July 1944, and James Woodward, born in January 1947. When William Woodward Sr. died in 1953, Billy inherited his father's legendary thoroughbred racing operations. In 1955, the Bel Air Stud had become the top money-earning racing stable in America, and the champion thoroughbred Nashua won the Preakness and Belmont Stakes. On paper, Ann Woodward had achieved everything she had dreamed of as a girl in dusty Pittsburgh, Kansas. But behind the gilded facade, the marriage was a nightmare that grew darker with each passing year. Both Ann and Billy were heavy drinkers, turning to alcohol to numb unhappiness and resentment. Ann had become increasingly dependent on prescription pills, uppers to get through the day, downers to sleep at night. The couple's fights were the stuff of legend in New York society, brutal, violent confrontations that erupted both in private and in public. Billy had numerous affairs, most notably in 1947 with Princess Marina Torlonia, an Italian noblewoman, which led to a dramatic separation. At every turn, Billy belittled Ann's efforts to fit into his world. Her accent was still too Midwestern, her fashion sense somehow wrong, her very presence a reminder that one of their own had married beneath his station. By 1955, Billy had reduced the amount of money Ann would receive in his will and was insisting on the right to have affairs openly. The day before the shooting, Billy purchased a Helio Courier airplane from Pittsburgh, Kansas, Ann's hometown, and made a cruel joke. "My wife was manufactured there too." Then he informed Ann that once the divorce was finalized, she would never see their children again. That evening, October 30th, 1955, they attended a dinner party hosted by Florence Tucker Baker in honor of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, returned home around 1 a.m, armed themselves against a prowler who had been terrorizing the neighborhood, and retired to separate bedrooms, Ann with a 12-gauge Churchill Imperial shotgun beside her bed. Around 2 a.m, Ann heard her miniature poodle Sloppy barking, saw what she would later describe as a shadow in the hallway, and fired twice into the darkness at what she believed was an intruder. When she switched on the lights, her husband William Woodward Jr. lay sprawled face down in the foyer of his bedroom, completely naked, his face mangled by the blast of buckshot from the shotgun. He was 35 years old. The Oyster Bay telephone operator who received Ann's call at 2:07 in the morning heard nothing but repeated screaming, wild, incoherent, uncontrollable. Life magazine called it the shooting of the century. On November 25, 1955, the Nassau County Grand Jury rendered its verdict. There had been no evidence of crime. The prowler, Paul Worths, a German immigrant, had been arrested and admitted he had attempted to break into the Woodward estate that night, corroborating Ann's claim that her fear had not been irrational. But many believed that Elsie Woodward's wealth had orchestrated this outcome. Rumors circulated that she had paid approximately $400,000 to ensure favorable treatment. Billy's will revealed the starkness of Ann's situation. She received only $2,500 in cash, an insulting sum, plus lifetime income from 1/3 of the estate. The gross estate totaled approximately $10,186,000, but federal and state inheritance taxes consumed over $6 million. The legendary racehorse Nashua was sold for approximately $1,251,000. Ann was left financially secure but not wealthy by high society standards, and she had lost custody of her sons to Elsie in exchange for the family's legal protection. Society columnists referred to her as a jazzy little carrot-top killer. Those who had hunted tigers with Ann in India knew she was an expert shot. How could such a woman have accidentally killed her husband at close range? Ann fled to Europe in self-imposed exile, drifting from London to Paris to St. Moritz. It was there in 1956 that she encountered Truman Capote, the celebrated author who had penetrated New York's most exclusive circles and become the intimate confidant of its most glamorous women, his swans, including Babe Paley, wife of CBS chairman William S. Paley. According to various accounts, Ann took offense at Capote's interruption of her dinner. The encounter became heated, and she reportedly called him a little fag. Capote responded by pointing his finger at her and calling her Mrs. Bang Bang, a nickname calculated to reduce her entire identity to the moment of her greatest tragedy. From that moment forward, Capote became obsessed with Ann Woodward's story, telling anyone who would listen about his encounter with the notorious Mrs. Bang Bang, and planning to include her in his masterwork, the Roman Aclef novel Answered Prayers. On November 1st, 1975, Esquire magazine published La Côte Basque 1965, an excerpt from Capote's unfinished novel that exposed the private lives of his closest friends, transforming every secret confided to him into literature. His cruelest portrait was reserved for Ann Woodward, who appeared as Ann Hopkins, a beautiful woman from West Virginia who had once worked as a call girl and who, faced with impending divorce, had deliberately murdered her husband, with her mother-in-law allegedly paying off police to ensure no charges were filed. On October 9th, 1975, days before the Esquire issue hit newsstands, Ann Woodward consumed a cyanide capsule in her Fifth Avenue apartment. She was 59 years old. Whether she had obtained an advance copy of Capote's story remains debated, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Elsie Woodward responded with cold finality. "Well, that's that. She shot my son, and Truman just murdered her, and so now I suppose we don't have to worry about that anymore." 1 year later, in 1976, James Woodward, Ann's younger son, jumped to his death from a hotel window on Central Park South. In 1999, William Woodward III also committed suicide by jumping from his 14th floor Manhattan apartment window. The gunshots that killed Billy Woodward had set in motion a chain of destruction, claiming at least 5 lives over 4 decades. Capote's swans abandoned him completely after the Esquire publication. Babe Paley refused to ever speak to him again and died of lung cancer on July 6, 1978, without reconciling with the man she had once trusted completely. On August 25, 1984, Truman Capote died at age 59, the exact same age as Ann Woodward, his body destroyed by alcohol and drugs, his mind shattered by the consequences of his betrayals, his final words calling for his mother and for beautiful Babe. Dominic Dunn fictionalized the tragedy in The Two Mrs. Grenvilles in 1985, which became a television miniseries starring Anne Margaret and Claudette Colbert. In 2024, FX premiered Feud Capote vs. the Swans, with Demi Moore portraying Ann Woodward, ensuring that the question of what happened in that dark hallway, accident or murder, would haunt American culture for generations to come. And now we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Elsie Woodward said of Ann's suicide, "She shot my son and Truman just murdered her." The gunshots that night set in motion a cascade, claiming 5 lives over 4 decades. Does knowing both of Ann's sons also died by suicide change how you see what really happened in that hallway? We look forward to the discussion below. And thanks for joining us for another episode of Old Money Allure. Cheers.